The QAnon Shaman's lawyer, Albert Watkins, has an interesting defense for his client. Now, a lot of speculation, of course, on what defense he's going to use from the he was just protecting the muffins, which was Chansley's own defense, Jacob Chansley, the QAnon Shaman. But this one's interesting, and is full of ableist language. So you're gonna love that. And so his lawyer effectively called the people who took part in the January 6th riot brain damaged. Wow. Damn. Interesting. Also deeply offensive to people who are actually brain damaged and yet smart enough to not take part in the January 6th Capitol insurrection. But let me get to the quotes here because these are amazing. Chansley's attorney discussed his client with talking points memos, Matt Shuham, who reports that Watkins indicated that he's using his client's mental state as a defense. Watkins told Shuham, quote, a lot of these defendants, and I'm going to use this colloquial term, perhaps disrespectfully. Oh, no kidding. But they're all fucking short bus people. Ooh. These are people, he says, with brain damage. They're effing, and they use the R slur. They're on the goddamn spectrum. Holy shit. Wow. You can see what he's doing, and you can see why a lot of people would consider that to be deeply, deeply offensive. I mean, look, there are people on the spectrum. I don't even know if you're supposed to say that, honestly. I think there's a lot of people in the neurodivergent community, and I don't even know if I'm supposed to say that, honestly. But, like, definitely, I wouldn't say that. I for sure wouldn't say that. Deeply, deeply offensive. Okay. And the thing about people who are, have autism or Asperger's or anything like that, they didn't show up to January 6th to invade the Capitol. Okay. That has got nothing to do. By the way, that has nothing to do with whether or not you showed up at the Capitol or were a Trump supporter to begin with. It's got nothing to do with these. Okay. But then he goes on to say this, quote, they're our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors, our coworkers. They're part of our country. Yeah. These aren't bad people. If you're talking about the January 6th rioters, yes, they are bad people. Okay. But he says they don't have a prior criminal history. Debatable. Plus, they are subjected to 4+ years of goddamn propaganda, the likes of which the world has not seen since fucking Hitler. Wow, he is speaking very frankly on this one, as you can see. Yeah, but the thing is, yes, they were subjected to 4 years of propaganda. And I would say many more. It doesn't mean they had to listen to it. It doesn't mean they had to believe it. It doesn't mean that there weren't facts out there for them to go and look up. Doesn't mean they could have done their own research. And you can partly blame algorithms, of course, that drive people down the conspiracy hole. But again, spectrum or not, people have and make their own choices. And the thing that frustrates me the most is this guy is saying that people who have autism are brain damaged, which no. And therefore, as a result, are not capable of making their own choices and therefore will 100% fall for propaganda. And and that's just absolutely ridiculous. 100% ridiculous. Not true. And totally just bullshit ableist language. And not only that, it infantilizes them. It takes away their choice and automatically makes you people that listen to this and are receptive to this more discriminatory to people who have Asperger's, autism, etc., or what he says, brain damage. Okay? And again, there were plenty of people who have those differences in neurobiology. They were not happy to invade the Capitol. They didn't. They didn't do that. And plus, there were people who were not on the so-called spectrum that were more than happy to invade the Capitol. And so this seems like an incredibly sloppy, very offensive, throw everything at the wall insanity defense. The fact is, the people that were there, neurodivergent or not, made a choice to do it. Personal responsibility, guys. That's it. Now, that said, that doesn't mean propaganda didn't have an effect. It did. A full half of all Republicans now believe in the big lie, spouted by not only the president, but Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, conservative YouTubers, podcasters, broadcasters. You got people who are part of the anti-Biden left that are parroting this as well. You know, the whole voter fraud lie, as well as politicians who voted not to certify. With all of that together, that's a lot of people saying and supporting this very, apparently a pretty effective piece of propaganda on the Republican Party. I mean, Fox News itself is the biggest cable TV station in the country. Are you at all surprised that so many Republicans do believe in this? They're not, as this lawyer would call it, all short bus people. Again, super offensive. That it's fucked to say something like that about people. And besides, when you look at the makeup of the actual Capitol rioters, a lot of them were, well, they're podcasters, obviously, alt-right figures. You also had people who were pretty wealthy, successful business owners. One had a private jet. One was allowed to go on a business trip to Mexico, if you can remember her. So let's not forget who we're dealing with here. These were not working class, salt of the earth, regular people. Okay, these were people that were mad, generally fairly well off, racist as hell, and what they wanted was a dictator in the form of Trump. I'm just saying, they made the decision to ignore all the actual evidence and to live in their own reality. They rejected the information, they rejected facts, reason, logic, because guess what? They didn't like it. They weren't happy about it. As I've said plenty of times before, what Donald Trump did, one of the most effective things that he did, is to hold up a mirror to the country and allow the worst people to become the worst versions of themselves. Because, again, that's what they wanted. They wanted an excuse to be shitty. And understand that, by the way, Trump's shittiness was never the problem for them. His tweets were never the problem. Okay? The racism, the misogyny, the attacks on the disabled, for example, from Trump himself, and now echoed by this lawyer. It ain't the bug. It's the feature. That's why they love him. Because he says these things. Because he, quote unquote, owned the libs. Destroyed, ripped, obliterated, owned. That's it. It ain't mental illness that drove them to the Capitol riots, okay? It's hatred. It's team sports to an extreme and a rejection of objective reality. Fascism itself, I don't believe, is a mental illness. When it took over in the 30s, the Nazi Party gathered support from regular people. And the fascists, by the way, murdered people who had mental illness. Just saying. Just saying. So yeah, awful, awful defense, in my point of view. And we know exactly where they're going with it. And in my view, it could have a possibility of being effective because of the stigma the country has against people with mental illness. Now, I hope judges can see past this for what it is, and basically nothing more than a desperate attempt to get people out of facing consequences for their own actions. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.